Are you holding yourself back in life? Are there situations in which you're actually your own worst enemy? Is your mindset and your understanding of yourself limiting your overall success in life? How would you know if you're a victim of this kind of phenomenon? Well, today we're going to be exploring one of my favorite concepts. That's going to be the fixed versus the growth mindset. And we're going to show you how you can shatter your limitations by using one simple word at the end of any limiting thought. Let's dig into it. So now that we kind of have an idea of identity formation and ego, now we're going to move into, so what is a fixed mindset? And it basically is, how do we overcome being stuck in a fixed mindset? Now we have to understand what a growth mindset is. Things in life shouldn't be this easy. Like, it is so simple. It only takes one word to transition from a fixed mindset into a growth mindset. Welcome to the Renegade Institute. All right, so today we're going to be exploring the differences between a fixed and a growth mindset. But in order for us to do that, first we need to understand a little bit about identity and our ego formation first. So, what is identity? Identity is basically defined as our distinctive qualities or traits that make us as an individual unique. It's our overall perception and belief about ourselves, our characteristics, abilities, roles, and values in life. So we all hold these ideas about who we are in our mind, right? So we got our physical characteristics, how tall we are, how much we weigh, the color of our eyes, our skin color, our hair color, right? What our strengths, what our weaknesses are, what our genetic history is. But then we also have our mental traits as well. So like things like intelligence, creativity, problem solving, our ability to learn and take on new challenges. And in addition to all these traits, we carry a deep understanding of what our intrinsic strengths are and where are areas in which we feel like we need to get better at or things we'd like to improve, like our weaknesses. So when we combine all of these aspects together, right, all these ideas of who we are, this creates our self-concept or our ego. So what is the ego? And basically, the ego is a deeply held belief or heuristic of who and what we are. But, and this is super critical, with a specific focus on comparison to others. So basically, we look around to everyone around us and we're constantly ranking ourselves. We're like, am I stronger than that person? Am I smarter than this person? Am I more capable than that person? So the ego, right? It's rooted in external validation. It's a need to be better than the people around us at the things that we think are important or that we value in order to feel good about ourselves. But the problem is that when we are based in the ego, we end up feeling compelled to hide or invalidate our perceived shortcomings, right? We tend to avoid people that we might perceive as being better than us. And we end up also avoiding activities or situations that could highlight our perceived shortcomings, situations in which we might fail. And another critical aspect of that, the ego, is that the ego views us and who we are and our abilities as largely being fixed, right? When we take this approach, we view our abilities, our intelligence, our talents, and our character as being static, right? That they can't significantly be changed or developed or improved upon. And that once set, these abilities, whatever the limit is on them, end up becoming basically the boundaries of what we can and can't do. And when we're being egocentric, our value as a person, our sense of self, our identity becomes intrinsically linked in the day-to-day performance as compared to those around us. And this mindset can have a huge impact on our mental health, our relationships with others, and our accomplishments and overall success in life. And it reminds me of a quote that I love, which is, the fears we refuse to face end up becoming our limitations. So now that we kind of have an idea of identity formation and ego, now we're going to move into what a fixed mindset is. And so what is a fixed mindset? And it basically is a belief that a person's basic qualities, so things like our intelligence, our talents, our abilities, are fixed traits. They largely can't be changed, developed, or improved no matter how hard you work on it. Individuals with a fixed mindset often believe that they're born with a certain level of ability and that any effort beyond that ability doesn't really significantly improve outcomes. So it's a lot like video games like Skyrim or Fallout, right? When you start off, you have your skill trees, right? Where you have like attribute points. You get to determine how strong you are, how smart you are, but you only have a finite number of points. So in order to be stronger, maybe you got to be a little less intelligent, or maybe to be more charismatic, you got to be a little less lucky, right? But then in the fixed mindset, once those characteristics are set, in a fixed mindset, you're like, that's who I am. Put a stamp on it, seal it. That's it. It's done. Like, that's you. Those are your abilities. There's what you can do and what you can't do. And so life ends up being a series of dichotomous zero-sum situations. You either can or cannot do XYZ thing. And any effort on top of that natural talent kind of seems pointless. Like, the activity is either within our boundaries of what we can do and we can accomplish it quickly and easily, or it's outside of that boundary and therefore we can't do it, and we should probably just ignore it and move on and focus on the things that we can do quickly and easily. And so what ends up happening is that there's not really a point to trying to persevere or push through further, because it's just outside of the realm of what's possible for us. So an example that I heard that I felt really highlighted this fixed mindset really, really elegantly for me was stories about elephants raised in captivity. So elephants, right? When they're small, when they're baby elephants and they're raised in captivity, they can be tied to a stake that's hammered into the ground. And the elephant will try to escape. It'll try to wander off. It'll try and do its own thing, and it'll pull on that rope. But it's a baby. It's small. It's not very strong yet. And it will come to the conclusion, hey, this rope is too strong. That stake is too strong. I'm just stuck here. If this thing is tied to that thing and that thing is tied to me, this is like, I'm just stuck here, and that's how it is. Only the elephant will continue to carry that fixed mindset throughout its entire life. So years later, when that baby elephant is now a 2-ton monster that is capable of ripping fully grown trees out of the ground by their roots, is tied to a lawn chair, that elephant is like, well, I guess I'm just going to die here until someone moves me or feeds me, right? Because in their mind, they're like, I am not stronger than that rope. I am not stronger than that stake. And they even now, everything about them has changed. Everything about them has improved. They're bigger. They're stronger. They're massive, right? They will not try and pull on that string, because in their mind, once they were set as I am less strong than that string, they will never challenge that assumption ever again. And so we also can do this in our own life when we are using a fixed mindset. And when we have this fixed mindset, what it does is it ends up leading to an avoidance of challenges, right? Because we want to avoid the potential for failure, right? So when we're operating from an egocentric position, failure is seen as a direct reflection of ourselves, of our core identity. And it ends up, when we fail, it highlights our inherent limitations, those what we can do and what we can't. And so when we fail at an activity, we're not just failing as an activity, but we're actually failing as a person, right? And that makes us feel really, really bad about ourselves. So what happens is when you're operating from a fixed mindset, you end up gravitating towards only engaging in challenges that you know you can win. Challenges that are well within your comfort zone, where you're like, I know I can do up to a level 10 challenge, but you're only going to face level 7, maybe level 8. You're only going to engage in things that you know you can win, and you can win easily. But then what ends up happening is we never push ourselves and we never really get better. And that ends up incurring a negative feedback loop where because we're never getting better, it reinforces the fixed mindset that we're fixed and that we can't get better, right? And then so what that does is it ends up leading to a fear and avoidance of negative feedback or constructive criticism, right? So when you're operating from a fixed mindset position, constructive criticism, it basically is a personal attack as who we are as a person. You cannot give constructive criticism to an egocentric person operating from a fixed mindset, because in their mind, there is little, if anything, they can do to improve, right? Our abilities are fixed. Our understanding of who we are is static. And then what they're going to use is they're just going to use avoidance to try and protect their ego. They're going to invalidate why their low performance on that situation is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It's not important, because they need to do that to maintain the sacredness of their identity, because that constructive criticism, it's going right to the core of who they are as a person. And then building on that, when we're using that fixed mindset, individuals from that fixed mindset feel threatened by the success of others around them, right? Because the ego, it is rooted in external comparison to the playing field of others around us, right? And so if people near us are succeeding and doing really, really well in that zero-sum dichotomous game, that means by nature, we are worse than. And then we end up feeling bad about ourselves because someone else doing really well, by comparison, draws attention to our shortcomings, to our limitations. And as a result, people with a fixed mindset are generally going to seek to surround themselves with people who they perceive to be less than, right? Like people in a fixed mindset, they don't want to be a small fish in a big pond. They want to be a big fish in a small pond. They want to surround themselves with less capable people so that when they look around, they can go, yeah, I'm pretty cool. I'm pretty good. I'm pretty capable, right? Because capable people around them make them feel insecure, and it is a direct attack on their sense of self. And ultimately, this ends up leading to stagnation, right? So this fixed mindset, it hinders personal and professional development across the board in just about every way. These individuals, they're way less likely to be willing to take any sort of risks, right? They're super prone to giving up easily. They'll try it once. If they're not successful quickly and easily, they're just gonna be like, nah, it's too hard. I'm gonna give up and I'm just gonna focus on the battles that I can win, right? And so initial difficulties in challenges are seen as indicators that, no, I'm just not good enough. Whatever that thing is, whatever it requires, I don't have a high enough skill level at that ability. And they don't see the value of grit or hard work working beyond that initial effort because they feel that they're not meaningfully able to overcome those challenges to improve their abilities. And so with a fixed mindset, basically we're operating under, there's an archetype of an idea of who we are, and it is very limited. And we basically build this like glass cage around us of what we are capable of doing, what our abilities do allow for, and anything beyond that, those are our limitations. That's the other side of that glass barrier that I can't reach at all. Examples of what this fixed mindset can look like in terms of narratives. So people, when they're like, you know what? I'm not going to apply for that promotion because I don't have an MBA, right? They're self-grading themselves. They're like, hey, I am not good enough. I don't have enough prerequisites. I'm not blank enough. Like I'm not good enough at, or I'm not good at expressing emotions. So rather than improving communication skills and trying to work through fights, they're just like, nope, I'm not a people person. I'm just too stubborn, right? Or, I'm not going to try out for that team because I'm just not athletic enough. I saw other people that were more athletic than me try out, and if they're not going to make it, then I definitely can't make it. I'm just not going to try. Or I'm not going to apply for that job because I don't meet the minimum qualifications, or smarter people than me have already applied, so there's no reason to apply. Again, all of these, like the elephant stake to the ground, right? Where we're going in with a certain set of preconceived assumptions about our capabilities, about our worth, about our value, and we are setting personal limits on how far and how capable we can go.
There is more than one sort of prison, Captain. I sense that you carry yours wherever you go.
So, if this is happening to us, how do we kind of shift the framing? How do we overcome being stuck in a fixed mindset? Well, to understand that, now we have to understand what a growth mindset is. So the term growth mindset, it was an idea that was coined by the American psychologist and Stanford professor, Dr. Carol Dweck. And the idea is basically that a growth mindset is just the exact opposite of a fixed mindset in just about every way. See, rather than our sense of self and our abilities being seen as an enduring fixed limit that can't be changed, it's a boundary in who and what we are, people with a growth mindset, They view themselves as constantly changing, constantly improving, and constantly in learning and evolving. Their sense of self is separate and distinct from their current abilities. They're themselves, which is like higher than, and then their abilities, which is like a separate entity from them. And so rather than the starting stats at the beginning of the game, at the starting abilities being the end of our progress and the beginning of our limitations, these starting stats are the launching point for our progression from there. So if we started out of like a 7 out of 10 on strength, from a growth mindset, we can then progress from that 7 to a 10 through hard work, dedication, and just being really tenacious about improving ourselves and our abilities. The other thing that's really cool about a growth mindset is that it is not predicated on the ego, or it's not set in the ego. And then other people's abilities and performance ends up carrying no weight on our feelings about ourselves when we're using that growth mindset. Because again, that growth mindset, right? It's inwardly focused. So if you do really well, it has no bearing on or impact on me or my abilities or my sense of self. We only care that we're being better than the person we were yesterday. We're in competition with ourselves, not those around us. This then, when we're using a growth mindset, it leads to an attitude of embracing challenges, right? Because our identity is not locked into a static set of abilities or qualities, right? We're able to disassociate from our sense of self, who we are as a person, from our performance on any individual task at any individual point in time. And so difficult or challenging tasks from a growth mindset perspective are seen as ways to test and improve upon and sharpen our skills rather than an affirmation of our limitations. See, with a growth mindset, we can take constructive criticism really well, because if we do well on a challenge, we can end up being humble about it because it's not rooted in an egocentric desire to be better than those around us. And our sense of self is independent from others. And then when we do poorly on a task, we can take that constructive criticism and learn from mistakes, because poor performance today does not necessarily mean that we're weak or that we suck, and then it does not ensure that we're going to have poor performance tomorrow. There's always that ability to improve later on. And so we don't end up taking this criticism personally, because it's not us as a person, us as an individual being critiqued, just our specific in performance or outcome on that single endeavor. And then when we're using that growth mindset, we see others' success as inspiring rather than threatening. See, with a fixed mindset, if someone around us performs well, then we by default feel worse. It hurts our ego, right? It makes us feel bad about ourselves and our abilities. But from a growth mindset, seeing others perform well, it shows us that it's possible. It opens up that door that, like, hey, if they can do it, I think maybe I can do it too. But it also shows us like what methods, what tools, what techniques can we use for accomplishing our goals that we might not quite be there yet at achieving. See, individuals with a growth mindset, they're going to seek to surround themselves with competent, highly skilled people because they are fueled by and enriched by that kind of environment rather than avoiding them, so that they can learn how to improve upon their own abilities. And then lastly, when we're operating from a growth mindset, failure is actually seen as a positive thing, not a negative thing, right? With a fixed mindset, failure is just an affirmation of a limitation. It shows us our boundary, right? It shows us our limit in our innate abilities. But with a growth mindset, right, failure is seen as a teacher. It's someone that instills a lot of wisdom in how to do better next time. It's like that quote that I always love, which is, I make smart choices because I have experience, and I have experience because I've made a lot of dumb choices. And so when we fail from the perspective of a growth mindset, it means we're pushing ourselves to do something that's difficult. It means we're trying to do something that is slightly outside of our current capabilities, and that we're striving for something more. As Mary Kay Ash once said, aerodynamically, the bumblebee shouldn't be able to fly, but the bumblebee doesn't know that, so it goes on flying anyway. So as a side note, for all my book talk girlies out there who've read Fourth Wing, right? Dane Atos and Violet Sorengale. Dane Atos, fixed mindset, right? He looks at Violet. He's like, you're too small. You're too weak. You're too fragile. You have too many health issues. You're just going to die. You're just going to get killed. I need to protect you. I need you to get out of here. I need to help you. He was absolutely operating from a fixed mindset that like there was nothing she was going to do. She was never going to be good enough to overcome the challenges that she faced. Whereas Violet, she went into it and was like, oh my gosh, this super sucks. And yeah, I'm playing from a down position in a lot of ways. I'm going to figure out what I got to do to overcome these challenges. And she did it. And so Violet was the embodiment of a growth mindset throughout the Fourth Wing series. All right, so for our practical application, the first thing we got to ask ourselves is which mindset do we think we're operating from? And again, this isn't going to be static. There might be areas in which we're totally a growth mindset, and then we might have other areas in which we're totally a fixed mindset. But the first thing we got to do is try and identify, are there areas in our life where we're operating from a fixed mindset? And we got to look at each one of those subjects and ask ourselves questions like, how do we feel about failure? In this subject, is failure something to be avoided, or is it something that we actively seek out? How do we feel about other people performing really well in that subject, right? So for me, certain subjects I'm totally cool sucking at.
Ouch. Oh, ain't it good when things are going your way? Hey, hey.
Because I'm like, yeah, I'm bad at it and it's cool. It doesn't affect my sense of self. And so I can employ a really positive growth mindset with it. But then other subjects that are really important to me that are kind of woven into my sense of self and who I as a person am, I operate from a rather fixed mindset on those things because like if I'm bad at it, I want to shy away from that. If I perform poorly at it and people outperform me, that impacts my understanding of myself. That hurts my ego. And so I actually have a fixed mindset in those kinds of activities where I got to ask, like, am I surrounding myself with people that I look up to that are better at the thing that I want to be good at? Or am I surrounding myself with a bunch of mid-tier people who are easily defeated, right? So that I can, spur my ego and be like, yeah, I'm better than them at that thing, right? We also need to ask ourselves, like, what kinds of narratives do we use when we're talking to ourselves, especially when we're looking at challenges or doing things that help us accomplish our goals, right? Do we say things like, people like me just can't be successful at XYZ thing. I'm just not blank enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not charismatic enough. I'm not good looking enough, right? For me, a huge example of this in my past, this was a really, really difficult lesson for me to learn, was in high school, in sophomore year, I ended up getting cut from the lacrosse team because I wasn't very good. And that was really, really difficult for me. So I had been playing lacrosse for 3 years at that point. I started in 6th grade. I really loved it. I enjoyed it. But in my heart, I did not feel like a lacrosse player. I was really, really struggling with some deeply rooted imposter syndrome, where in my head, I as a person was just not a lacrosse player. I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't fast enough. I wasn't popular enough. Like, just for whatever reason, I did not accept that I was capable of being a lacrosse player. And so other players on my team who literally had just picked up a stick like a month prior were doing way better than me because I completely lacked the confidence. I would take one look at someone and be like, oh, they're bigger than me. I'm going to lose that contest. I'm not even going to fight them for it. Or, oh, they're faster than me. I'm not even going to fight. And so I didn't have the aggressiveness that I needed, the confidence that I needed in order to be successful. And I ended up getting cut from the team. And that was really, really hurtful. And it took a really long time for me to look back and kind of learn the lesson that, like, hey, you did that to yourself. Like, you had been playing for 3 years. You were like on a skill level much better than a lot of your other teammates, but you got cut because you were losing the game in here. You were losing the mental game. You were using a fixed mindset. You were allowing that imposter syndrome to tell you you weren't good enough. And so that was a really, really difficult thing for me to learn and overcome throughout the years. So strategies for overcoming our fixed mindset. Let's say we've asked ourselves these questions and we have identified certain areas in our life where we are operating from a fixed mindset and we want to do something about it. Well, the easiest one, and things in life shouldn't be this easy. Like, it is so simple. It only takes one word to transition from a fixed mindset into a growth mindset. And all we have to do is you take a fixed mindset phrase, I'm not good enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not charismatic enough, I don't know enough about it, and you add one word to the end of it, and that word is yet, right? I'm not strong enough yet. I'm not competent enough yet. I'm not knowledgeable enough yet. Because what that does when you add yet, right? You are turning that fixed statement, I am not blank enough, which is forever applying to everything. And you put yet, suddenly you put a timestamp on it, right? That statement only exists right now in this moment, in this situation. And any other situation outside of that, any other time frame outside of that, I don't know. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not, right? What you're doing is you just put a door on that glass cage that opens up the wall for more possibilities in the future. You've added a time dimension. You're like, I'm not strong enough yet, today, right now, in this moment. Tomorrow, next week, in 2 months, maybe I will be strong enough. And that is such a powerful way to take a fixed mindset and transition it into a growth mindset. All we have to do is remember to put the word yet on the end of it. And it's so powerful enough. That's actually a rule in our household, is that my children, they are not allowed to say that they can't do something. They are not allowed to say they're not strong enough, they're not knowledgeable enough, they're not big enough, they're not wealthy enough. Like, they have to put yet at the end of everything, because that's going to condition our mindset. That's going to set those neural pathways in our brain to constantly view life from a growth mindset perspective. But sometimes a fixed mindset is really sticky, right? If we've been operating from a fixed mindset for a long time, it can be really, really hard to break out of these perceptions, to break out of these molds, especially if it's like imposter syndrome or something like that. And so there are other strategies that we can use as well to try and help break us out of these situations. And the one that I have used in the past, and that also, it's funny, all of this comes from high school, right? Was if you are operating from a fixed mindset, try taking yourself out of your setting, that setting where that fixed mindset was established, and put yourself into a new setting where none of those prior conditions exist, those external conditions, and see if those constraints still apply, right? And so for me, surprise, freshman year and sophomore year in high school were tough. Like, not only did I get cut from the lacrosse team, but like, I was not terribly popular. Like, I was nerdy. I was a bit of a loser. I didn't have a lot of friends, right? And so like, I really struggled socially. But I was operating from a fixed mindset. All of those negative attributes that I was experiencing were actually self-imposed, where I was like, no, I'm not funny enough to hang out with those people. I'm not clever enough. I'm not social enough. I'm not cool enough to, be part of this group or that group. And then what ended up happening is one summer over sophomore year, I was visiting my cousins on the other side of the country. I was 1,700 miles away from home, and they invited me to go to a summer camp with them. And so for 2 weeks, I was going to this summer camp, and I was like, no one here knows me. No one knows who I am. I am a completely blank slate. I can be anyone that I want to be. And I took it as a unique opportunity where I was like, I'm just going to be me. I'm just going to lean into being who I am as hard as I know how to do it. And I'm going to be so unapologetic in being me. And we're just going to see what happens, right? Because there's no consequence. If everyone here at this camp hates me, who cares? I fly back home 2 weeks later. I never see any of these people ever again. And you know what ended up happening? I don't mean, I'm not being hyperbolic here. I literally was the coolest kid at the camp. Like, to put it in perspective, there were dudes that were getting in fist fights with each other because the girls they liked me, right? And it's like, it was so mind-blowing that I could go from being like the 98th most popular person out of 100 at my high school to being 1 out of 100 at this camp. Like, everyone knew my name. Everyone wanted to sit at my table. Everyone wanted to talk to me and be on my team. Like, I was literally the coolest kid at the camp. And it was so mind-blowing because I came home from that camp and then for months was like, and now I'm back to being a loser. What's going on? What's happening? Why? How can I be so popular and so social there? And then when I come home, I'm right back to just being a nobody. I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense. And after months of thinking about it, I was like, oh my God, it's me. It's my mindset. That was the only thing that was different because I'm me here and I'm me there. But I had a completely different mindset there. I was just like, I was not afraid to be myself. I leaned into who I was. I didn't bring any of that fixed negativity that I had of, oh, I'm not cool enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not whatever enough with me. And I just was me. And that was so authentic and it was so genuine that people really, really connected with it. And then it was like, I came home, it was such an aha moment that I was like, oh my gosh, dude, you can be really cool. You can be popular. People like who you are, but you need to ditch that fixed mindset. You need to ditch all these preconceived notions, just like the elephant, right? You need to ditch the idea that you're not strong enough to pull this string out. Yeah, maybe that was the case 2 years ago, but it's not the case today. You are no longer the person you were when you built those frameworks, when you built those understandings. And so I had to overcome that fixed mindset. And that was such an aha moment for me that from that point on, my social life got so much better and I was so much more comfortable and able to be myself. That it was really powerful experience. But coming back to like sometimes those fixed mindsets, like the only way we're going to see them, the only way we're going to be able to push back on them is we have to remove ourselves from the context that we're in because there's so many structures and things around us that kind of limit us that we need to pull ourselves out of that and put ourselves in a new situation that allows us that creativity to kind of explore and push those boundaries and see if those boundaries are real or if maybe they're self-fabricated. And then, so that brings us to our next one. So sometimes that's not even enough, right? Sometimes that fixed mindset is so entrenched, it's so stuck. We need an even bigger push. And so my third strategy for getting out of a fixed mindset has to do with intentionally identifying your fixed mindset areas. So if you're like, man, I really suck at public speaking, and then putting yourself in a role or a responsibility or a job that forces you to break that mold, right? So if you're like, man, I really suck at public speaking, and then you volunteer for a role that requires you to talk to strangers. You get a job that requires that in sales, right? That requires you to go door to door and talk to people you don't know. And it forces you outside of that preconceived fixed mindset notion. For me, that was learning a foreign language. I have always wanted to know a foreign language. I've always wanted to learn one. I always thought that that was something that I was the most embarrassed about myself, is that I only spoke one language. That being said, I am also really dyslexic. Like, I have been on a 504 special education program, a 504 special education program since the second grade. Like, learning, I can't even English good.
I give you the Derek Zoolander Center for Kids Who Can't Read Good.
And I know it's English well, but right? Like, English was hard for me. If I didn't have spell check, like, no one would be able to read any of my stuff. Like, I am only able to be successful because of modern technologies. And my mom, who is also dyslexic, like, she failed French 4 years in a row in high school. Every single year she failed it because she was so bad at it by being dyslexic. And she was undiagnosed. At least I had the benefit of the special education program, right? But then I got a job in the Army. And that job required me to be proficient in a foreign language. And it sent me to a language school for 4 months. And guess which language I got? Yep, you got it. French, right? And so for 4 months, oh my God, that was to include SEER school, going through selection, getting a master's degree, language school was hands down the hardest academic thing I have ever done in my life. It was 4 months, 16 weeks, where I would, no less than 2 times a week, did I get out of class, crawl into my truck, and I, as a 32-year-old special operations soldier, started crying because I was having such a difficult time with it, right? And I would just I would cry for like 10 minutes, and then I'd be like, you know what? I cried last week, and I made it to this week. And I bet I'm going to cry again next week. But if I just keep doing this, 12 more times, I will get through it. And I did it. And it happened. And I passed my OPI. I went from being the last person in my class. I was going in 9 hours a day. I was doing tutoring before class. I was staying late after class. I committed myself fully to it. I put myself in a situation where I'm I know I have a limitation. I know that I'm using a fixed mindset and I'm leaning on my disability saying that I cannot do this. So I intentionally put myself in a situation where I have to learn this language. There is no other way. I have to do it. And it sucked. And it was super hard. It was the hardest thing I ever did. But maintenant, je connais français. Mon français n'est pas bon, mais j'ai communiqué bon plus comme un enfant. Pour mon dernier test, j'ai gagné un 2-2 on le OPI, where basically I got a 2-2 on the OPI. That's a good score. A 2-2 is better than what the Army mandates for being successful in French. And so basically they said that I am able to communicate in French on the level a grade schooler, but it was something I was able to do. And now I'm super proud of that accomplishment, even though mon français is still très como se dice, n'est pas bon. But, right? So those are the strategies that we can use to try and overcome a fixed mindset. The first of which is always put yet at the end of any fixed mindset situation. If we know we're stuck in a fixed mindset, try removing yourself from that context and retest those boundaries and see if those boundaries still apply to you. And if that still doesn't work, then identify that fixed mindset and put yourself in a situation where you have to overcome it. You want to learn a foreign language? Move to that country. Move to an area where English just isn't an option and you have to push through that boundary. And the cool thing is, when you're transitioning from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, right? Once you break one of those boundaries, all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, what else here is a boundary that isn't actually a boundary, right? And then you start to press on every single one of those walls and you're like, that wasn't actually a wall. I was able to push through that. I wonder if I can push through this wall. And then suddenly it wakes up on that elephant. It dawns in that elephant's mind. You're like, I wonder if I can pull this stake up. I wonder if I can break this rope. And then you start doing it and you start realizing that through dedication, through perseverance, through hard work, you can overcome anything. And I promise you, if I can learn French at a basic level, you can overcome anything. And as long as you stay committed to it and as long as you're willing to put in the work. So in conclusion, how far we go in life can be massively impacted by our frame of mind and how we view ourselves and our place and structures within the world. And all too often, people are applying a fixed mindset to their understandings of themselves and their abilities. They're saying things like, I'm only so smart. I'm only so strong. I'm only so funny. I'm only so likable. I'm only so popular and capable, right? But with a little bit of intention and a little bit of practice and adding a healthy amount of yet to the end of any of this fatalistic thinking, we can start to transition. We can start to transform our frame of mind, our understanding of ourselves from a fixed, finite understanding into a growth mindset where our limits are endless and we can become the best version of ourselves with just a little bit of hard work and some patience and discipline. So, what did you guys think of that? Was it good? Was it not? What are some ways that you think you've had a fixed mindset in the past, but that you were able to overcome it? What did we get wrong or what did we leave out? And if you think we've earned it, hit that like or that subscribe button down there below. For our closing thought and quote of the day, that's going to be coming from Mark Twain. And he said, 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than by the ones you did do. So sail away from that safe harbor, explore, dream, and discover. Anyhow, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for hanging in. I hope you enjoyed it, and get out there and start pushing some boundaries. Lux Via, my friends. Cheers. Oh man, sometimes you just gotta send it, right? Like 80% solution now is better than a 0% or perfect percent. Wait, what? It's so bad. 80% solution now is better than 100% solution later. Oh god, my computer's turning off. It's all falling apart. Height, our eyes, our ears. What the? Why? Physical traits such as our height, our weight, our height, our height, our weight, our height, our weight. Oh man, we're gonna have so many bloopers. This is gonna be great. Take 3. All right. I'm not wearing pants because it's hot out.